computer. Jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome aboard. My obeisances to everyone. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha.
Kripasya kripasindiyevacha
Patitanang
patitanam
bhavanebhyo
pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
And our prayers to Srila Prabhupada for his blessings, his presence, and his empowerment. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale.
Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Dinamani.
Namaste
Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani
Shesha
Shanyabari Pastachade Shatari. Jai Prabhupada.
Jai. Wonderful to be with everyone. Even though it looks we have a very small group today, tune in tomorrow. I think we're going to have a much bigger group. I was thinking, I can't remember the fine details, but I can paraphrase where it's a statement of Bhakti Siddhanta. I think they either reported to Bhakti Siddhanta or it was an engagement that Bhakti Siddhanta had, but somehow there weren't many people there for that particular talk. And Bhakti Siddhanta instructed the students that even if no one comes, you can preach to the walls. How many people have heard that one?
Yeah, that's one of the big, sometimes we have to, I find that really encouraging because sometimes we have classes like last night's, my preaching program is, losing a lot of people for some reason. It was such a small program. I felt encouraged to preach to the walls. There was 4 people, which used to be 30 people. So I don't know what's going on. But
yeah.
Prabhupada also did that, right? When he was in New York.
Prabhupada had the
buildings. Yeah.
Right.
Nobody
Prabhupada had they rented some big building or something, and either no one came or hardly anybody came. And Prabhupada commented something to the effect of, "Oh, you didn't see? Narada Muni was there."
Yes.
And he mentioned some other famous people.
Before Gurudev, remember he was sharing the space with Dr. Mishra, and then Dr. Mishra was so envious of Srila Prabhupada. He moved him to another building down the road, and that one had no windows, nothing, and Srila Prabhupada was there. And in that building, Srila Prabhupada, nobody came. He put the notice out, but he used to say, and that's when I read Srila Prabhupada said, if nobody comes, my Guru Maharaj said, I should preach to the walls. In that
okay, so maybe that's where that came from. That sounds pretty authoritative. That sounds like, you added a lot of nice detail. Yeah, you can preach to the walls. Well, one thing is that, as I'm thinking, we preach to ourselves. We preach to ourselves all the time. And funny, I was thinking, where was it? Was it this morning in the class? Yes, in the class this morning, we were discussing about, Madan Mohan was giving the class, and he was on the topic of the mind and the intelligence, which is really something that we talk about all the time. There's one nice verse, Bandor Atmatmanastasya Yenat Maivatnanajita Anatrama Tushatru Vevarti Tatmai Vishatruvat. Panditji, you know that verse?
The Bandor, the first line sounds familiar, but I don't have it memorized. No.
It's well, you know the English that the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy.
Yeah, I'm actually memorizing some six chapter verses. I'm going through memorizing some verses.
Is that in the 6th chapter? I don't even know. I never know.
Yeah,
I learn verses, but I never know where they are.
Yeah, that's on my list of verses in the 6th chapter. That's why I had it in my mind already, because I was thinking, I was just memorizing the verse today, 6th chapter verse. Anashrita karma palam, that verse,
Karyam
Anashrita
karma
karma
karoti, yeah.
karyam
Yeah.
karma karoti ya, sasanyasi cha yogi cha, um, sasanyasi cha
Naniragniran
yogi.
chakriya.
Naniragni na chakriya. Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, it's a great verse. So
But
anyway,
you,
regarding the mind and the intelligence, I was thinking, and I was going to say something in the class, but a lot of people raised their hand today. So, and I was good with that because I always ask questions and I always speak. But I don't think I hardly said anything today other than Madan asked me to translate a verse that Prabhupada had put in his purport, but did not translate it. Sometimes Prabhupada does that. He'll quote a verse and but not translate it, which was unfortunately was a well-known verse spoken by Kapila Dev, where Kapila Dev had said, "Oh yeah, satang prasang,
sampasangam,
yeah,
satam
satang
prasangam mama virya
prasangang mama
samvido,
virya sangvado, yeah, bhavanti hritkana
bhavanti hritkana
hridasa
rasa
and
inakataha, tajjosana rasa bavargam.
Vargavarmini Shraddha Ratir Bhaktir Anukramishiti." Prabhupada put in the first half of the verse, and so that's really all I said, I think, during the class. All I know in that time was trying to remember the name of Ambarish. He was talking all about Ambarish. He couldn't remember what Ambarish's name. So that's pretty much all I said. But the topic came up about the mind and the intelligence. And so what I was thinking that I was going to share, but I didn't because I wanted other people to speak, that in the general understanding in the world is that consciousness, when we're conscious, it's like the brain is operating. And so everyone knows they're conscious and our brain's going this way and that way. But it was really only until I came in contact with the Vedas that it became really, really clear. There's the mind and there's the intelligence, and they're very, very different. And they can be they can either work together or they can fight with each other. Like, for example, our understanding, the mind, sometimes we say the mind simply accepts and rejects. It's kind of like a child. Here's an analogy I thought of. If a child wants this, wants that, wants this, wants that, right? Pretty much all the child is accepting and rejecting. I want this, I don't want that. And the parent is kind of like the intelligence. Oh no, you can't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Right? You don't stick your hand to the fire. Don't. Right. So the parent is kind of like the intelligence, right? And the mind is just like this child that just this wants. It doesn't. It's not intelligent. If it wants something, like the mind, I always give the example that if you're at a dinner party and there's this wonderful cheesecake that's being offered for dessert, yeah, you have a piece. Then, you're full. You're clearly full. But they come around and say, "Oh, would you like another piece?" And this is where the intelligence is going to say, "You're definitely you're going to get sick." But the mind just wants it. So the question is, who's going to win out? And so it's really, really, really important that we sharpen our mind, our intelligence. And that's it's really important to understand the philosophy because the intelligence has to preach to us, kind of preach to the mind. in order to, so that the mind will gradually start to listen, just like a parent has to gradually teach a child how to think on its own. But in the beginning, it's just, but most people, the materialist doesn't understand this mind and intelligence are two different things. I think we take it for granted because we're so focused on it, because we've learned from day one practically that there's 8 constituents of our bodies. What are those 8?
Earth, water,
For sake
fire,
of,
air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego.
correct. Yeah. And so it's just so crystal clear to us. Actually, the 3, we could even go further, that we recognize that we're not, the mind is one thing, the intelligence is something very different, and we really have to learn for the mind to control the intelligence. That was never, I mean, I've got a degree in psychology. That was never discussed in any of my psychology classes. And, but for us, it's second nature. And then, as Kirtaneshwar Prabhu just mentioned, the false ego. That's really the only one, like a certain yoga traditions. Let's say they're not even Vaishnavas, not even, like say a Buddhist. They have some understanding that we aren't the body. And many yogis may have an understanding that we aren't the body and we aren't the mind. And I think it's possible to understand that we aren't the body and we aren't the mind and we aren't the intelligence. And I think almost anybody can get that. Certainly yogis understand we aren't the body and the mind, intelligence, but only a Vaishnava can understand that we aren't the false ego. Only Vaishnava. Because even it says that, there's a nice verse that Vindakshava muktimaninas tabasya bhavad avashuddha buddhya aruri krichchena param padang patanti tonada dedushmar angraha. Yenyera Vindaksha, that's how it starts. Yenyera Vindaksha, my dear lotus-eyed Lord. Vimuktimaninas. Vimuktimaninas means one who, vimukta maninas, that he's falsely thinking he's liberated. Vimuktiman, or he has a poor fund of knowledge. And he may, Aruri Krichchena Parampadam, under great difficulty, he may be able to reach the Brahman realization. Imagine, he comes all the way to realizing Brahman realization, but still, Vimuktimaninas, he is falsely thinking he's liberated, but he isn't. And it's saying because of the mind, it's not understood. So only Vaishnava can realize that we aren't who we think we are, that we really aren't the enjoyers. Does that make sense, Malati?
Yeah, that's why I had the question. I'm thinking that, does that mean that the yogis, they understand that they are not the body, but they don't understand they are spirit soul, or they are not the servant of the Lord? What is it that they don't
They may
understand?
understand. No, they clearly can understand their spirit, that they aren't the body,
Okay,
but they can't understand that they are Jivera Swarapoi Krishna Nichadas.
servant of the Lord.
Because anything short of Jivera Swarapoi Krishna Nichadas is you're operating under false ego. You don't know. Even those that attain God realization, but only God realization of Brahman, and even Paramatma realization. Where's my? Oh, that won't quit until I stop. Let me turn my phone off. Yeah, even those who attain Brahman realization, which is a level of God realization, they don't understand that they're not the false ego. And even you can go to the next level. What's the next level? What is the next level
Paramatma.
above Paramatma? But Kirtaneshwar Prabhu, what happens when where do we sometimes see that fail when
Well,
someone
because
becomes Paramatma realized?
well, sometimes they get caught in the desire for mystic powers, but one element is that I've heard before that even someone can be Bhagavan realized, but still there's some if they can be caught up in the awe and reverence versus the understanding Krishna. They can be caught up in worshiping Krishna in a way that's not on the ROG platform. I've heard devotees describe that.
Oh, that's getting pretty esoteric. I don't think Prabhupada speaks that much on that specific point. But where I was going with this is that we hear about a lot from Prabhupada is that the Mayavadis, when they become, or if they become, or an impersonalist, if they become Paramatma realized, and they're actually seeing God, they think that's them, and therefore
Mm.
they call each other Narayan. And in fact, if we go back to Chaitanya Lila, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought Mahaprabhu back to his home because he had passed out in he had passed out at the Jagannath temple and he was in ecstasy. So when he finally woke up, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said to him, Namo Narayan. He addressed him in that way. And anybody know what the response was? What Lord Chaitanya said?
Vishnu, Vishnu, Vishnu.
I believe he said. I think this is where he said. Um, he said. He said. Krishna matir astu. Krishna matir astu. That means always think of Krishna. Krishna unto Krishna. Krishna matir in your mind. Mastu. Always think of Krishna. So so even he, Sarvabhauma, addresses Narayan. So we see that often, and we see the Prabhupada talks about that. So clearly, those that they even come to the level of Paramatma realized, but they think that's them, and they call each other Namo Narayan, Namo Narayan, because they think it's them. That's false ego. Now, I do hear some really esoteric things, outside of Prabhupada's teachings about the realization in neutrality, and but Prabhupada, I mean, like in the spiritual realm, and Prabhupada doesn't talk much about it because he just wants to take us right to the top. But neutrality it's not merging. That's not Sayuja is something different. Sayuja, and my understanding is that Sayuja is merging into the Brahman effulgence, that type of liberation. But one who actually develops the realization of Krishna in just great all in reverence, then that is a level of perfection. And that, like even like the dust or the blade of grass, it has, just unlimited appreciation. And it's just waiting for Krishna to come and step on them, step on the dust. So that is a level of perfection. But Prabhupada doesn't talk a lot about it because we're in line of Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya wants to take us right back in the Gopi Bharta becoming Dasa, 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 Anudas. We want to become the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the damsels of Braj. And how that all plays out, I don't know. We'll just hang in. But that was certainly Lord Chaitanya's mood, to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant.
Gurudev, I have one more question. Just now you said the mind and intelligence is always preaching to us. So who is that us? I want to know. Is the mind and intelligence? Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting question that maybe I can't answer in any real clarity. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. Without the soul, the consciousness is the soul. And we're in some sort of sleeping, very sleepy spot. We're starting to wake up. But that's all part of, it's just a symptom of the soul. Because we aren't the mind and we aren't the intelligence. But the consciousness for us to understand that it's the soul. It's the soul that's, it's like you're sleeping at night, but it's a dream. But you are dreaming. It is real. Dreams are real. They're real in the sense that you're really having a dream. Like you go to a movie and watch a movie and you get all totally absorbed in the movie. You cry, you laugh, but it's just, some flashing of light. Sometimes you walk out of a movie. When I used to go to movies, many, many, many years ago, I remember when I go to the movie, like I couldn't even, I was like, sometimes I couldn't drive. I was like, I'm so spaced out from the movie that I find that, like when I'm walking out, it's like coming back, I'm being like drawn back into the world, and it's very bizarre. Has anyone else experienced this when you come out of a movie? Do you remember coming out of a movie? It's like, you have to kind of wake up. You were just so absorbed in having some other identity. Because what happens in movies is we identify with someone else. Going to movies is a form of escapism, escaping, trying to escape the miseries of life. Let me be somebody different for a while. Let me just go into a whole nother world. And that's what movies do. That's why they're very popular. You can really get absorbed in them.
It's so sad. I cannot get out of that movie. When you see animals die, a dog or something, it's so good to the master, and then it dies. I cannot get out of that movie. I know it's an actor, that the dog is also acting, but yet you feel like, you can't get that out of your heart that, how can the dog die? Cannot die,
Yeah.
Get in there. Yeah.
So our whole life is like being in a movie. We often describe it as being a virtual reality. We just enter into it and we let it all go.
Gurudev, is there a difference between when the mind and intelligence is preaching to a devotee's mind and intelligence is preaching, and the mind of a materialistic person who's attached to sense gratification? So if their mind and senses are preaching to them, is there a difference?
For a materialist? A materialist is doing the same thing. It's doing it. It just doesn't realize what's going on. For us, it's really clear. For example, I see a woman, a very beautiful woman, for example, and my mind starts to go where it shouldn't go. Right? I mean, that can happen. And then my intelligence is, what are you doing? Bang, the intelligence comes in and corrects, because that's the mind. It takes time for that mind to be controlled, completely controlled. And then to the point where the mind doesn't have interest in these types of things anymore. I mean, it happens all day long, my mind. Like in the morning, does everybody, when your alarm goes off in the morning, when I was pretty proud of myself. I get up at 2:30, but now I'm kind of like knocked down a notch after Kirtaneshwar. He gets up at 2.
Oh my God.
Kirtaneshwar Prabhu, when your alarm first goes off, doesn't your mind kind of want to go back to sleep?
Every day, every single day. Not one single day is it not fight me.
Right.
Good to hear that, Prabhuji. Good to hear that.
But the intelligence, if the intelligence says, listen, I know you don't want to get up now, but if you just get up in about 15 minutes, you're going to be really glad you're up.
Yeah.
Right? You'll be happy. And it's going to take, by the time you finish brushing your teeth and you go in to wake the deities, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this. I'm really glad I'm up. This is the perfect time for japa. It's a perfect time for the deities. It's going on, but the materialist doesn't realize it. That's the point I'm trying to make. They're not focused. I see it so clear. This is the mind and this is the intelligence, and I see it all the time. Materialists, they don't know it's all kind of merged together.
They don't really have intelligence, as far as, I mean, my understanding, if I may, because I mean they have intelligence, but it's covered over. It's not acting, because Krishna. I mean, we think my Guru Maharaj often speaks like this. The word intelligence means intel, like what we know. Intel is like something we get. We have an intelligence agency that goes and gets intel. So we're getting intel. But Krishna gives us the definition of real knowledge in the 13th chapter, 8 through 12. He says, humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, etc. And he says everything else besides these is to be considered ignorance. So someone in one of those things is the perception of birth, death, old age, and disease. So someone who is spiritually minded, even if they're just born that way, they're born with that intelligence. Some people are born able to see the perception of birth, death, old age, and disease, and to see the entanglement, of, husband, wife, children, and the rest. They're able, like, Shukadev Goswami or, Shankaracharya or Madhvacharya. They're born with this intelligence, and naturally they're inclined toward Krishna. And so when we develop that through process of devotional service, because that's, naturally the devotional service, we get causeless intelligence, causeless knowledge and detachment. What's the verse? Vasudeva's. So the point I was making is, go ahead, Prabhu.
It's a good point. But what I want to point out is we're seeing it from a higher level. It's a different angle of vision. And it's a higher angle of vision to see when we understand what is absolute knowledge, that we understand as we become devotees. But like for a materialist, clearly let's say, for example, someone is a smoker and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor explains to him, listen, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to get lung cancer. And maybe the doctor even shows him a X-ray of the lung, what's happening to his lungs. It's all getting black, and this, that, and the other. And so it's clearly it is a material intelligence, not spiritual intelligence.
That's the point I want to get to. Material intelligence.
Yeah. Right. So the material intelligence is saying, oh, okay, doc, I got it. You're right. I'll quit. It's going to take the material intelligence. We're not talking about the absolute truth. It's got nothing to do with Krishna. But for the materialist, there still is material intelligence and spiritual. Material. material intelligence and material mind. So when we start learning higher intelligence, that's like another level, another angle of vision.
And
But for the
that's the real.
materialist, hmm?
Go ahead, Prabhu, please.
Go ahead. No.
Please. Oh, so that's
Well, I
the
was
real,
gonna.
and that's the real intelligence that that understanding that Krishna gives, because he also says whatever else there may be is ignorance. But I mean, he's saying he's thinking of gyan, not buddhi. But it's always my thought that intel, when we hear that word intel, means knowledge. So just like, you gave the example of the lung cancer, but also whenever we have real intelligence, even in that, even a materialist, detachment's natural. For instance, I heard a devotee give an example. Like if I'm making some sweet rice and you think that sweet rice looks so nice, the mind is contemplating the sweet rice. It's, the senses are becoming attached. I'd say, well, actually, I forgot to put sugar. I put salt in the sweet rice instead of sugar. By that knowledge, you're immediately detached from the sweet rice. In the same way, when we have that in spiritual intelligence, we immediately become detached from the material world.
Right.
That's gonna it's gonna really burn us.
So yeah. So, but I think we need to make that distinction between spiritual intelligence and material intelligence. They're both there, and my intelligence was guiding me. How to go to medical school, how to do this, how to do that, everything. But when I came to understanding absolute intelligence, well, that's like on a whole nother level. And that's but there's some very intelligent materialists that aren't spiritual at all, and their intelligence is helping them get through life and achieve what they want to attain in life. Go to med school, do this, do that, and you're going to end up dying. You're going to end up another life. Your whole identity is going to change. But there is that intelligence and the material intelligence and material mind. Now our
Isn't there?
intelligence becomes spiritualized when the intelligence is now hearing from Krishna. It's now connecting to Krishna. It's still acting if it's not connected to Krishna. But when it's connected by Krishna, it takes on it becomes spiritualized, and we're listening to our spiritual intelligence. But even like, it's not really nothing particularly spiritual about the fact that if somebody offers me that extra piece of cheesecake at night, it doesn't really. It's a pretty, or if somebody's overweight and it's just not healthy to eat it. That's still material. But we're now applying spiritual intelligence to guide everything. But still, there's material stuff that's being dealt with. It's not always we're not always using the highest intelligence. So anyway, that's.
Thank you, Gurudev. Thank you, Prabhuji.
But even the materialist doesn't think about. I guess the thing that I was going to comment in the class today was that for the materialists, they don't have any understanding of even material intelligence and material mind. It's just all kind of one blur.
They can't
And
understand the difference between the intelligence, the mind, or even the thinker and the thought. Sometimes they don't even understand the difference between the thinker and the thought. They think that the me that's thinking is just a thought in my mind.
right.
And that's they get a little philosophical sometimes, and they start thinking, well, actually, the I is just a concept in my mind also. And so then then it leads them toward impersonalism.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point. That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. But maybe probably the most important thing I'm saying is that only a Vaishnava can go beyond false ego. Because what is beyond false ego? Jiveta Sarapoi Krishna Nichadas. I'm eternal servant of Krishna. That is real. That no one can realize that except the Vaishnava, and it takes bhakti. And Krishna says, actually, the verse was there in today's, Prabhupada quoted in today's verse, Bhakti Mama Vijananti, that only by devotion can I be known. Because self-realization What does self-realization mean? What
Understanding who
is,
you really are.
yes, but to understand who we really are includes Krishna, because we
Yeah.
are so locked in to, we're like, what are those twins called when they're hooked together? Siamese
Siamese
twins?
twins. Yeah.
We can't understand who we are without understanding Krishna, because we don't have any, we're all about Krishna. We and Krishna are one in the sense that we're all about, it's kind of like Romeo and Juliet, right? If you just hear about Romeo, you don't hear about Juliet, you can't understand Romeo, right? Sometimes I've done this in colleges. I'll say to the students, I'm going to say, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say something. And as soon as I say this word, I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. And I'll say, Romeo, and everybody, Juliet, right? It works really well in the colleges. Romeo, Juliet, or Juliet, Romeo, because you can't separate. It's the first thing that will come to their mind. So self-realization means Romeo and Juliet. It means us and Krishna. So self-realization means two. You can't just realize yourself, because that really isn't who you are. We are totally Jivera Swarapoi Krishna Nichadat. We have no real identity. Self-realization means realizing self with a small s and self with a capital S. That is self-realization. You can't realize the self independent of Krishna to fully realize the self. That make a lot of sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Gurudev.
Yeah.
I have a question. That's okay.
Sure.
Kind of two questions. One comment, one question. Comment is that, like in regards to intelligence, it's like sometimes we have like some of the most evil people in the world have the highest IQs.
True.
They have this immense capacity,
True. True.
but because of uncontrolled senses, it's vishatam tamisram. They're just dragged by hell to just doing horrible things. And Prabhupada says, they're inclined toward, ugra karma, horrible works meant to destroy the world. So I always think, like we have these great. I mean, I know we're in Tucson. We have Raytheon is here. You know what Raytheon is? Raytheon's like
Yeah,
the
they make. I
main
know. I know they make. I know they make radar.
and missiles, and
Okay.
especially missiles that are being used in Israel.
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's brilliant people, like light years smarter than I am materially.
and we get them. They come. A lot of
Light
them are like
years.
they come to the temple. They come to the restaurant, and they have no. One second, Prabhu, you dropped a paper. They have no concept that what they're doing is wrong, and it's actually going to hurt them in the end, because these missiles and these bombs, they're bad for the world, so they're just thinking about their money. So I mean, that's the same intelligence, just misdirected. Is that what the conclusion is here?
Totally misdirected. Totally misdirected. Totally misdirected. They've got
Isn't
great, huge intelligence, but and various demigods, they can be like super intelligent. I mean, infinitely more intelligent than us, but they're not necessarily devotees.
Yeah. Isn't there a
Okay,
verse that uses the word naraka booty?
I've
Isn't there
never
a
heard
verse?
that term, but I like it. Narada
Na,
Booty,
na,
Narada,
Naraka booty. Naraka
Naraka
booty, like
Booty.
hellish intelligence. I think it's the verse, one who sees the deity as stone, one who sees the spiritual master as a normal human, and the Vaishnava, they're considered to have hellish intelligence.
Oh, that's nice. No, I didn't know that. Okay, we have two questions, and we want to
Okay.
get to those because we're just stirring nectar here, and we could just go on forever, and we'll never get to our two questions that we have. First, let's answer Rasika Pujari's question. My question for the week is about Dhruva Maharaj. Why was he given his own planet and not given Krishna's eternal abode? Your servant, Rasika Pujari Das. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to mention something, and I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. And funny, I was thinking about this when I read your question, because I was going to answer this question with something, and I want Rasika Pujari to see if you are able to answer this question for me properly. And I've never heard this defined before, but when we say the acharyas tell us, we hear from the acharyas, what does that mean? Rasika Pujari, specifically, what does it mean when we say, practically, what does it mean when we say we hear from the acharyas? What are we talking about? What does that mean? What does that
The
mean to
knowledge
you?
is the knowledge is unadulterated. There's nothing added to it.
Correct, but I want to be more specific. Who are we talking about? What do they look like? What are the names? When we say we hear from the acharyas? Practically,
Srila
what does it
Prabhupada,
mean?
Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta, the Guru Parampara.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, that's good enough. We practically, when we say the acharyas, what about say in ISKCON, for example? You know, some of our very exalted devotees. Are they included when we say it's?
Yes, Gurudev, I think they're included.
Okay. I think you could say that, but I'm going to say that practically when we say the acharyas, we're talking about Prabhupada and above.
Yes.
And I'd really like to hear from Panditji. Do you agree with me that I would say when we practically say we hear from the acharyas, to me it means Prabhupada and above. And even in ISKCON, for example, there was a resolution made. By the way, I don't always buy the resolutions from ISKCON, but there is a resolution, I like it, that no one is to be called acharya. None of us are termed acharya. You know, quote acharya. I mean, acharya means achar, behavior, one who is teaching by examples, acharya. But when we say the acharyas tell us, we're really, in my mind, I'm thinking we're hearing from Prabhupada and above. Prabhupada, and Rasika got it right. Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, all the way back to Krishna.
You want me to comment?
Yeah. Oh, I'm wondering what if you agree with that.
I agree with it, but I also think that, I mean, at least in ISKCON, in the world I live in, I think that kind of notion could be taken too far, where there starts to be a disrespect of living Vaishnavas. Because at the same time, anybody who, I mean, Prabhupada included, and all of the disciplic succession included, they are speaking based on the previous acharyas. The Bhakti Siddhanta is saying the same thing that Bhaktivinoda is saying, the same thing that Jiva Goswami is saying, Prabhupada is saying the same thing that Bhakti Siddhanta is saying. So our devotees also are saying the same thing that Prabhupada is saying, ideally. That's disciplic succession. But they may add a contribution, not necessarily in terms of philosophy or changing the philosophy, but like there are books by our devotees in ISKCON that have been greatly researched, and based on comments of the previous acharyas, they can come to a conclusion about certain topics that are valuable to us. And I mean, I know personally, I hear sometimes 3 to 4 Prabhupada classes a day, but hearing from another devotee or a servant of Prabhupada, sometimes I get more benefit out of that.
I do too. I do too. I do too. I couldn't agree
and
more.
so I think when we say acharyas, that we're always referring to Prabhupada and above, because people are living, and they're not, we no one can compare to Prabhupada's level.
Correct.
And we wouldn't want to compare them to Prabhupada's level. And they wouldn't want to be compared to Prabhupada's level. At the same time, I've seen that in our movement, at least where I'm in the world I live in, there can be a major, sense of disrespecting sometimes living Vaishnavas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments that in his Jiva Dharma. He says, it's amazing how when a Vaishnava dies, people will revere him, worship him, speak about him. But that very same Vaishnava, when they're alive, many times is not recognized, disrespected, or not treated accordingly. So I think it's a fine line. Personally, I think it's a fine line between realizing that we're part of the disciplic succession, and like I'll just finish with this statement about that. I grew up Catholic, and so in the Catholic Church they have Jesus, and everybody knows Jesus is the founder acharya of the church, and everybody worships Jesus and loves Jesus, and that's the main thing. But they also have so many Catholic saints, and people follow them in terms of the way they follow Jesus. And I think it would be a shame in our movement if people forget about some of the great devotees in our movement. Like Radhanath Swami is just a throw out example that, 3 generations from now, are devotees going to know who Radhanath Swami is, or is he just going to be a name? And so I think that there's something to say about recognizing, the great saints that are alive in their own right, while simultaneously not overshadowing Prabhupada's position. I know that's kind of a out of the box answer, but that's something I think about a lot.
It's a good answer. I still hold to my position, though, that Radhanath, I'm like a huge fan of his. He was a dear friend also, and we had fun, back when I met him back in New Vrindavan, and we hung out and we had some wonderful experiences together. But generally, I think it's my general thing. We say the acharyas, we're talking about Prabhupada and above, and it doesn't mean that there aren't people that are on that like super advanced. But generally, when we say the acharyas tell us Prabhupada and above, and I would imagine that as time goes on, say 5,000 years from today, because it's supposed to be the next 10,000 years, will Radhanath Maharaj be thought of? Some people may know of him, maybe, I don't know, but I think it's going to be Prabhupada and above. And I in many ways, I see somebody like Radhanath Maharaj as an acharya. I mean, he's unbelievable. But generally, our understanding is Prabhupada and above. So
I agree.
Okay, thank you. So the acharyas tell us, this is, I'm going to answer your question. The acharyas have told us that when Dhruva Maharaj, so we know what happened. Dhruva Maharaj, he was full of material desires. He wanted a kingdom, some great kingdom. It was greater than his grandfather, great grandfather. He was full of material desire to the last moment. When he saw Krishna, when he fell before Krishna, when Krishna finally, he was full of material desire to the last second. But when Krishna showed up, when Krishna revealed himself, he fell at his feet. He said, Kachan Vichintam. I was simply looking for broken glass. Now I found you. Api Divyanat Swamin Kritartosmi. Paranyache. I have no other desire than you. Your question's an excellent question. Why didn't he go right back to Krishna? Material desires were finished. The acharyas tell us that Krishna knew Dhruva better than Dhruva knew his own self. Dhruva felt completely free from material desire. Krishna, knowing him more than he knows himself, knew that there was still a little bit there. And therefore, Krishna, knowing that, put him in that position to finish that up and then back to Godhead. This is what we've heard from the acharyas. So that is my answer.
When you say back to Godhead, you mean Dhruva Loka, not his. Is that what you're referring to? Because he lives on a Vaikuntha planet, but it's in this universe, so to speak.
Yeah, that gets a little bit more complicated, but that's.
But that essentially is back to Godhead, as far as I understand.
In that case, that's back to Godhead.
You were
but
referring to the
he did
36,000 years he ruled before you went
correct,
there. Okay, just making sure.
correct,
Thanks.
yeah, correct. And I read somewhere that he's both there and in Vaikuntha. That that he's both on his planet here and anyway. I don't want to complicate things too much, but yeah, but he still had some material desire, very 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 slight. Okay, now Malati's question. Do we have time? Yeah, maybe. Hare Krishna Gurudev. I've been reflecting on truth. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Kalki's question. Where's Malati's? Okay. My question for this week is based on Bhagavad Gita 3:15. Yanhi vyastit jatyete purusham purusharshadha
Samadukam
samadhu.
Sukam.
Keep going.
Samadukam Sukam Dira Samrit Tat Kalpate.
Okay, great. Okay, and the translation is, O best among men, Arjuna, the person who was not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Okay, Gurudev. How do I explain this verse to one who was very attached to material life, yet is trying to understand the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and wants to follow practically? And Malati saying, I feel that even as devotees, unless we are fully surrendered to the will of Krishna, we are affected by happiness and distress. How did I help myself? I think you mean to say, how do I help myself and help others? Thank you, Gurudev, for your loving guidance. Okay, so the specific question, how do I explain this verse to one who is very attached to material life, yet is trying to understand the instructions of the Supreme Lord and wants to follow practically? Being attached, well, first of all, in the Vedic system, we're talking about how so we hear all about this andakupam, that marriage, getting married, it's like a blind well. It's a dangerous place to go. In fact, we're going to hear where Dhruva tells his father, to just, go to the forest, leave for the forest. And anyway, in the Vedic system, I'm going to make an analogy first. I'm a boat guy. I mean, I live in the water. I mean, I live at the water, and I've been sailing my whole life. Everybody know what a nut and bolt are? A nut and a bolt? If you live around the water and you put a nut on a bolt, especially around salt water, what's going to happen?
It's gonna erode. Gonna rust and erode.
And it's going to be, it could be like impossible to get the nut back off again.
Yeah.
You'll break, everything will break. It's not going to come off. It's rusted on there. So what we do, there's this stuff that we have that it's like a lubricant that we put. It's a special lubricant. It's really messy. We put this lubricant on the bolt, and then we screw the nut on, and that stops it from corroding. It'll stop the corrosion, assuming you have, say, stainless steel, because stainless steel will ultimately rust also. But you put this on it, and at least, for our lifetime, you can get it off. Okay, so going through brahmachari life, because the Vedic system is you start as brahmachari. And in brahmachari life, it's like preparing for marriage. It's like putting this lubricant on so that even though it's going to go on there real tight, when it's time to get it off, it's going to come off. You're able to give that up. And we saw examples of like King Parikit. He was, quite young, or even King Bharat. Yodhushtajan Darasutan Suhridrachandri Spashaha Jahau Yuvaiva Malavat Uttama Shloka Lalasaha. That Bharat was very, very young. He was beautiful. He had a wonderful kingdom. Everything was going on well, but he was able to unscrew it easily. Uttama Shloka Lalasaha, because he was a devotee of Krishna. So he could live that attached life. But when it was time to unscrew it, he was definitely attached to his kingdom. But he could unscrew it easily. So that's the Vedic system. Okay, now, but what about those who are married and they haven't done that? How will they give it up? I heard I can't remember exactly what the occasion was. There was a big jagya or some famous thing where Vasudeva asked Narada Muni, Vasudeva, Krishna's father, asked Narada Muni, how can we become detached from family life? You know what his answer was? Get married. Get married. If my friend Madan Mohan was a very, very advanced devotee. He was the one who sent me my first Bhagavad Gita, and he's a very, very, very dear friend. He has a wonderful wife, and he has 3 children, and he's just a rock solid devotee. Definitely going back to Godhead. He's told me, and I think I'm not going to say, I don't think this was in total confidence. He said, household life. If you ask Madan, how was household life? He uses one word: brutal. Brutal. In other words, I know that if he were ever born again, and don't get married. He did it. But if we do it in Krishna's service, especially in Kali Yuga, we're going to get a lot of help. So if someone is attached to family life, nothing you can do about it. Just add Krishna. And Krishna will be the magic. Like sometimes you get a bolt that are stuck together. If you put enough WD-40 on it, enough lubricant, gradually it may free it up again. So if we simply add Krishna, then no need to take sannyas in the age of Kali. In fact, that's one of the things that are recommended that we don't do in, five things. One does not offer cow in sacrifice. One does not offer horse in sacrifice. One does not offer flesh to the forefathers. One does not give a child to a woman whose husband is barren, right? He can, in other words, if someone's wife can't have a child, he can provide the semen. That's not allowed in this age. And then taking sannyas, that just says prohibited in this age. Now, of course, Prabhupada, that's another thing, how Prabhupada adjusted it. We simply add Krishna, and I practically seen amongst devotees those that are actually chanting, following, etc. I'm convinced they're going back to Godhead, even though they may find some attachment. Krishna is there. Krishna is going to preserve what we have and carry what we lack. So if we're a dutiful father, a dutiful husband, and, very often the husband may feel detached. He could take off, but the wife really isn't ready. Then he stays with her. It's not like Vedic times. He just takes off and the child is going to. If we're chanting our rounds, following the principles, et cetera, in family life, we're going to be fine. Whatever we fall short of, we just depend on Krishna. Ananyaschintayantamam yejana payapasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshema vahamyaham. Krishna will preserve what we have and carry what we lack. And so, to answer your question practically, you didn't tell me much about the couples that you're talking to or the people that are in married household life. How are they ever going to get detached? Just have them start chanting Hare Krishna and leave it between them and Krishna. And to whatever degree they advance in this life, they may go, depending on how serious they get, up to the point of chanting 16 rounds, getting initiated, etc. They're covered. And let's say they take birth again in the next life. They would have made tremendous advancement. Their next life is going to be wonderful. Prapya punyukitam lukam ushitva shashvati sama. Because Krishna asked Arjuna, what if we don't really finish in this lifetime? Krishna says, you'll have a great birth. You may even go to heavenly planets for some time, enjoy there, get rid of it. But Krishna's taking care of everything. So just have them add Krishna on whatever level they're willing to take Krishna in. And they're covered. Nothing will ever be lost. I mean, nothing will be lost. Even a little advancement saves you from the greatest fear. So just get them to add Krishna.
Yeah, I was thinking of my auntie, because she's so attached to my uncle, and he just passed away. And they look at the distresses, the sadness at the moment. So, but lucky, like you said, that she wants to read. So this is why I'm asking is like, how am I, by just she's not chanting, but just listening. She's reading Bhagavad Gita. So I'm thinking the 2 days that she wants me to read with her and explain Bhagavad Gita, then that might help her to add Krishna into her life. Then that's what you're telling.
It's not, it might help her. It's guaranteed helping her. If she just says the word Krishna once, she's in great shape. Says it one time, great shape. What to speak of what you're giving her. Guaranteed her next life is going to be splendorous. It's going to be wonderful. Wonderful.
Because, when somebody has passed away, that's not what they want to hear. You know what I'm saying? Somebody has just passed away. She's been married to my uncle for nearly 60 years. So that's not what she wants to hear. Like, when we say you're not the body, you're the soul, and somebody is going through so much of sadness. So this is why I was asking that question. But now I understand.
You are becoming an expert Shiksha Guru, my dear. You are helping many, many people, and you're understanding. You have to give them whatever they can, whatever level they're at. That's where we have to meet them.
Okay.
And we have to know that just a little advancement, alpasya dharmasya, a little bit of Krishna that you give them, it's so potent. Their material life will end very soon. Their future will, even if you're just like what we're doing with Sri Devi. Whatever you give them, it's the slightest little. Actually, she's gone pretty far. But the people that you're talking about, if they're just chanting, they're listening to you. They're hearing They're drinking the nectar of transcendental sound vibration. And it's purifying them so much that we can't even imagine how powerful it is. Alpasya dharma. Alpa means drop. A little bit. I read where Prabhupada says even if you get just a scent of devotion, they're in great shape.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're at the, oh my God, we're past our time. Starla, Hare Krishna. Are you enjoying our conversation? Are you enjoying our?
I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to understand. I'm still reading, so I don't understand everything yet, but
I don't
do
understand
enjoy
everything yet. But all you have to really understand, you don't have to become a great philosopher. All you got to know is God is a little blue cowherd boy. And he's the love of your life. And that's all you really have to know. Because most of this knowledge that we get, we're just going to throw it away at the end. And just, we don't even, the knowledge will stand in our way. We just want to fall in love with Krishna and forget everything else.
Okay.
You don't have to become a great philosopher. Krishna is a love of your life. You're eternal. He's the soulmate you've been looking for. And if you get that and you understand that he's in his name and you're chanting his name, reading a little bit about him, that's all you really need.
Okay.
You're
but I
on
did
the path,
enjoy
my
this
dear.
conversation.
Thank you. You're doing great. We're really proud of you, and we're really happy to have you with us. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Pandit Ji, for being along. And we'll anybody that can join us tomorrow, we have another class tomorrow, same time, same station.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you all.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.